Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's live session. This session is brought to you by the team at India's leading automotive events, Commercial Vehicle Forum and Two-Wheeler Forum. We have collaborated with Here Technologies to bring you this session on last mile excellence. And before we begin today's session, I wanted to take this time to especially thank our partner, Here Technologies, for supporting this session. Here Technologies is a location data and technology platform that moves people, businesses, and cities forward by harnessing the power of location. By leveraging their open platform, they empower their customers to achieve better outcomes, from helping a city manage its infrastructure or a business optimize its asset to guiding drivers to their destination safely. To learn more about Here, you can visit here.com. So now coming to agenda for today's session, we will be having a panel discussion and we'll run few polls during the session. Then finally, we will close with an audience Q&A and a brief presentation at the end. So before we start this session, just wanted to share a small ground rule. I would request all you attendees to direct any questions that you may have to the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. I'm asking you to do that so that it can help us focus on your questions in a focused manner. And you can also upvote these questions. So this will help us in addressing the most burning topics. So please note once again, questions to be entered in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. So without further ado, I would now like to introduce our expert speaker group. Firstly, I would like to introduce Mr. Siddharth Desai, who is an IITian and the co-founder of Clean Slate Technologies, a location intelligence company. Secondly, I would like to welcome Mr. Christoph Herzig, who is the head of fleet applications at Here Technologies and oversees the product management of innovative location-based applications for urban fleets. And prior to joining Here, Christoph worked with Philips Lighting for over 2 decades. Our next speaker for the day is Mr. Adish Thakur, who is AVP Logistics at Zomato and leads end-to-end delivery operations for Zomato across India and UAE. He's responsible for delivery partner support center, managing real-time demand supply balance and driving ops excellence. In fact, Adish has played an instrumental role in setting up Zomato's last mile fleet and its functioning. Finally, we have a moderator for the session, Mr. Pawan Mullukutla, who is the director of Electric Mobility Program under Sustainable Cities at World Resources Institute, India. Pawan has almost 2 decades of experience in the urban mobility ecosystem, and prior to joining WRI India, had worked at Bosch for close to 2 years, setting up the e-mobility, e-micromobility connected solution program. So over to you, Pawan.
Thank you, Rohit, and very good afternoon to all of you, and welcome to this very interesting webinar and discussion. Rohit, I think you'll have to move the spotlight to the speaker. So, welcome again, once again on the panel, and I hope we have some interesting discussion and last mile solutions to our cities. So we will get started by, I would request each of the panelists with the first question on um, how we are actually addressing, how you are addressing last mile logistics and what are some of the challenges that you have faced in your own organization. We could start with that. But before that, I would say that could we do a poll, Rohit, for the very first question? Rohit? So while we figure out the poll question, so Christoph, I wanted to hear from you that, how has been the last mile? Okay, sorry. So there is the poll here. So I would really request each of you to take this question, if you can take a moment, that India has its unique set of challenge. And what do you think is one of the biggest challenge in last mile supply chains? The question must have popped up on your screen. So I request each of you to address this and respond to this question, please.
Pawan, maybe in the meantime, you can continue with the discussion.
Yeah, sure. So, Christoph, will start with you. If you could introduce in terms of what your organization or your company is looking at, and specifically how you're really addressing the issue of last mile delivery. Over to you.
Bowen, for this question. So for Here Technologies, anything related to logistics and supply chain comes down to location. And location, when you think about, goods have to move not only from A to B, but they also have to be, in many cases, handed over at special locations. You need to know what is happening actually while you're on the drive to the customer. So dynamic information about the traffic situation is of utmost importance. So for us, it's actually the availability of the best digital content maps for the road network, connecting to the buildings and the right entrances, and then secondly, meshing that up with real-time information from the streets, so we can actually predict, not only plan when somebody is at a certain place and can deliver, but also make sure that we, during this process, keep the estimated time of arrival always available to anybody in the supply chain, be it the logistics service provider, actually the shipper who has an interest that the customer time window is met, and the consumer themselves to receive the goods. So for us, everything, the fabric between everything is location. And we're actually providing an open platform to make that happen.
Thank you very much, Christoph. So I'll get back to you. I have some questions. It was something interesting that you shared with us, that location has been very, very critical in your planning. I'll get back to you in the second round. So Adish, it was very interesting to hear when Rohit was mentioning that, you were involved in designing the entire last mile plan for Zomato. So what were some of the challenges you faced, and can you really share with our audience, how you went about planning this whole last mile delivery?
Thanks, Pawan. Thanks for that question. As in, like, in terms of, I was a part of the team which basically we started operations or logistics operations at Zomato. So Zomato primarily, as most of us know, that we are into a business of food, and one part of our business is online ordering, which where we ensure that the food is reaching to the consumer whenever the consumer wants it. As in, like, around 3-4 years back, Zomato used to be in a service where we used to allow restaurants to deliver their own food, and we never used to manage the logistics of that. But while we were doing that, we realized that it is very, very important for us to measure or control the complete experience of a customer, so that we can provide the best in class service for each and every customer that is there. And that is where we started working towards the last mile operations or the delivery operations in the food delivery business. In terms of the challenges, I think India, as in, like, basically, food has two specific things apart from any other logistics operations. One, basically, the hyper localness of the business. Food is prepared, cooked, and needs to be delivered in 20-30 minutes of its preparation. So that provides a very unique challenge in terms of how can you manage that on time, on demand, demand and supply balance. Like, you always have peaky business, like your lunch demand to dinner demand is different. Your off peak demand is very different. Your weekends are heavier compared to the rest of the day. So these are some of the interesting data points that we get, and how do we balance that with the supply is something that is very interesting in solving the problems, and ensuring that we can provide the best customer experience with the highest amount of efficiency that we can bring about on the platform. So that's what we do in terms of our online ordering business. The last mile operations or the logistics is one of the core pillars that we build our operations upon. And I think with the scale that we operate now, it is very important to look at every data point in its minutest detail in terms of how the deviations in traffic or how the deviations in demand patterns is actually impacting the overall supply chain. Because in terms of people who are delivering in an on demand scenario, the number of people that you have is limited, and to manage that demand and supply, even a minute here and there can basically impact the overall planning and the demand supply balance at that point of time. So that is something that we maintain and try to optimize at a real time to ensure that we can serve to the maximum amount of consumers at the maximum amount of efficiency with the best customer experience at the same time.
Just as a follow-up question, Adish, like, it would be very interesting to hear your experience in this whole I don't know, should we even call it post COVID, but through COVID or whatever situation we are in right now, and we see that food deliveries really went up really high at certain times. So how did you manage? Because you brought about something very interesting. You talked about the traffic conditions. So you didn't have any traffic conditions, but at least during the last few um, months. But in terms of demand, what have you seen? Are there some numbers that you can throw to us? And how have you managed? Did you have to pivot your whole business plan, or what kind of thinking or planning went into that?
So I think, like all the industries, the initial first month for us also was very challenging to understand what exactly is changing, and a lot of things changed. One thing was that everyone was scared at that point of time. Not only the people who were delivering, but the people who were ordering, even the restaurants. All three partners in the supply chain. Which is the delivery partner who is going to deliver, the restaurant partner, would he operate or not, or the consumer who is going to order or not. So all of these three things went into a very, very different, how should I say, a scared cycle where they were not able to understand, is it safe, is it not safe. There were a lot of concerns that were going around that. But over a period of time, what we saw was, and then the WHO also released a guideline that food is safe, cooked food is safe, you can have food, and the chances of COVID spreading through food is very, very less. And that is, and then in times when people cannot go out, I think food is the only way people can celebrate anything. So that is what, as in like, was something that we wanted to cater to. So during the first couple of months, we actually tried to understand what is the consumer's need at that point of time. So there were two pivotal changes that we did at that point of time. One was basically, we moved a bit away, or we tried to start operations into grocery deliveries as well. So we knew that we have a platform, and there are groceries, something that is an essential, and people were not allowed to go out. So how can we leverage that supply chain and provide the best in class customer experience, or provide at the time when people need it the most? How can we as a company serve them at that point of time? So for a short period of time, we invested all our energies in terms of starting something which was related to groceries. That business did well for a time, till the time lockdown was there, and then we realized that now cooked food is back again, and we started focusing back on that. The second important thing that is an interesting paradigm that we realized, that contact, like COVID was all about contact. So how to break that chain? And that is where we came up with this delivery system called contactless delivery. So whenever you order, you can opt in for a contactless delivery, and the partner would come to your door and leave it at a surface where, as in like a chair, or outside your door, wherever there is a safe service. Click a picture and send it to you, that I have left the delivery parcel here, now you can go and collect in the next 2 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and stuff like that. So that was one measure. And second, to build the customer confidence and to ensure that the food is safe, we set up a lot of safety stations, and these safety stations were our restaurants only. So these people were taking temperature checks, these were providing sanitizers and hand washing stations to all our delivery partners who are coming and visiting there. So we were ensuring that every day a delivery partner is going to 10 places, his temperature is getting checked, he is sanitizing his hands again and again, so that the chances of spreading this is minimal. And along with that, the contactless delivery was something that consumers appreciated a lot. And that is where I think, and that is what we as a product company, or probably can do during such times, to ensure that the consumer is also safe, and our delivery partners are also safe. Because it's contact both the sides, like it can spread to the consumers as well, and as well as to the delivery partners. So that, I think, so that was the start of the overall COVID journey for us. But now I think, for us, the volumes are back to pre-COVID levels, and we're seeing a very good, as in like demand recovery. People are realizing that food is safe, and celebrating through food. I think that's the flavor that we're going with, and we'll be happy to serve, as in like, innovate more and more to ensure that, as in like, how can we deliver more safely to the consumers.
Thank you. That's quite interesting to hear, and good to hear that the sales are back to pre-COVID level. And I'll get back to have noted down some interesting points that you mentioned about pivoting your businesses and also ensuring health and safety. But Siddharth, I know you have been working in this IoT and big data space through your clean state technologies. And I know it's multi-sectoral, but is there anything that you have done related to last mile, whether it is passenger delivery or whether it is logistics? So can you really share about the your own company, and then how you have actually thought through last mile as what are some of the challenges that you have faced and how you have been addressing this?
So at Clean Slate, we predominantly work with large industry setups, whether it is large e-commerce companies, real companies, to essentially help them track and monitor different asset classes, whether it is workforce resources or material handling equipment or inventory assets, with the objective of improving the fulfillment efficiency. So most of our projects that we do and are geared towards helping improve the last mile deliveries, because by not being able to find the inventory, that amongst 4,000 boxes in a warehouse, which is the size of a football stadium, if it takes you hours to locate that one box which is inaccurately placed, that customer delivery is going to be delayed and impacted, and you're going to spend an unproductive amount of time actually looking for that inventory which is inaccurately placed as well. So our whole much more seamless and in a much more amount of time, whether it is a person or an equipment or an asset.
What are some of the challenges? I understand that you're supporting big industries overcome their own. So, can you share any of your examples in terms of how you have found address specific use cases, say for whether it was a hospital sector or retail sector,
Sure.
how you have them? Yeah.
Sure. So I come from a supply chain background as well, because I worked at more than, I've consulted more than 30 factories and warehouses to improve a supply chain spend over $1 billion. So I come from a little bit of background to understand what the critical challenges, especially within the factory or the warehouse, are. Now, if you've ever been to one of these larger setups, you have more than 200, 300 odd contract workers working just about everywhere. And in my experience, some of the challenges that I've seen, especially not in the purview specifically of last mile delivery, but in the purview of say middle mile, first mile, as well as to a certain extent last mile delivery as well, is how less visibility in terms of real operations does the supervisor or the management have about these operations running. Because when you have a large setup, you would have hundreds of workers, tens of equipments, thousands of boxes moving around everywhere. Uh, Lack of visibility around each of these is something that is just a huge gap that is currently prevalent, as in my previous experience as well as our current gig at Clean Slate. So because it is virtually impossible for a supervisor to be just going around everywhere to have visibility on what is actually happening physically on the ground. There are only so many places that one can be at, and even when one is, it is not. So to be able to address that, we that is what Slate was formulated with the vision of helping get real-time visibility on each and every moving aspects in the factory or the warehouse.
Sure. No, it's quite interesting to hear, and I'll come back to you. Christoph, I have some questions for you that I just want to hear. Is Here Technologies preparing for India e-commerce growth and last mile delivery? And what do you see some of the differentiators are?
Absolutely, yes. So India is a very important market for us. Number one, we have a very large presence in India, doing IT and map content work. And our business is the digitization basically of the real world, creating a digital twin. And for us, actually, in logistics and last mile particularly, it manifestates all the challenges that we have in dense urban settings when it comes to traffic, when it comes to locating people, buildings, as well as making accurate plans. So for us, the very first use case that you have is actually taking an address and turning that into an accurate coordinate. So actually, a driver, a walker can be actually navigated to that place. So with our geocoding engine, we have actually a capability to do that for India in India. This is one. Secondly, then reversing that whole thing, basically identifying somebody's location and then turning that into an address is the other way around, and we enable that as well. But the point is, of course, our data is only as good as we are able to collect it, and things are continuously changing. So for us, it's so important that we actually are able to ingest data from other sources, because when you think about, let's say, especially the case we heard before, food delivery, which is very dynamic, fast moving, and not extensive plans are being made. It's the quickest way from A to B in a triangle: driver, a restaurant, and then fresh food delivery to the end consumer, or groceries for that matter. These drivers, delivery agents, are a fantastic source of data because they're actually down to the consumer level, and with the right technical equipment, this is actually gives us the ability to continuously improve our services, both the content side as well as on the services routing side. And this way, actually, the HERE platform is uniquely designed to enable that between different parties in the ecosystem. So a system solution provider that actually offers a last mile solution with the logistics operator connecting the shipper and the consumer through one native platform that is actually secure, secure from a privacy standpoint, taking into account sensitive data and keep it managed where it belongs, and not, and this is very important for HERE Technologies compared to some of our dear competitors, we are not using location data to serve another business purpose. For us, location means location. So when we actually, let's say, collect probe data from a driving car, we only are interested in understanding what is happening for that to that have been made in the individual performing that drive. We're not interested in his, let's say, advertising potential, but we're just interested in enhancing continuously our location intelligence and providing better routing services for the next customer of ours. So from that perspective, with a self-learning, continuously learning platform based on ML and AI, we are actually very much prepared for even a challenging market like India, where we know the address system is not as 99.9% accurate as in, for example, where I'm sitting right now in Germany. And so only a learning platform is able to cope with this situation. And so from that perspective, having also the ability to collect and process massive amounts of data, and provide that back in real time to our constituents is our biggest strength.
So this is a question for all three of you when I am hearing. So, a couple of questions that have come up. So do you see yourselves as data companies or technology companies or, like consumer service providers? So where do you see yourselves? Christoph, maybe we can start with you and then move to Adish or whoever wants to pick up this question.
Well, I think, yeah, I think so. I hope at the end of this webinar, it's becoming pretty clear to anybody that, I mean, if it comes down to being dataful, being a data platform, this is what we are, and we are that actually for more than 30 years. So we have always been in the business of processing vast amounts of data, starting with satellite imageries in the beginning to now receiving LiDAR live streams from millions of cars at the same time, processing this data in real time, updating our maps. So for us, it's just an evolution into adopting more and more sensors to ingest into the platform to enhance basically our map content, our traffic flows, and helping people to get from A to B in a safe and fast way. So, and this is all depending on data. So yes, we are a data platform, and we make the data available to our customers. Plus, we invite our customers to inject their data and create even more meaningful solutions from that.
Thank you, Christoph, for that. Adish, what would you say to this? Like, where do you see yourself? I mean, are you eatery service provider or your data company, which happens to be stumbling upon just a last mile delivery? And with now AI and ML, I think there's much more. And you have kind of so much data. And are there any new ideas that are cooking that we should be aware of?
So, at the core of Zomato, we are a food tech company, or basically a consumer tech company. We want to provide solution to the consumer what they need, and as in we enable the movement of food through technology, and that's the core of what we build. In terms of how data helps us, and we use extensive amount of data, but we are not a data company or a data platform. We use that data to ensure that whatever services that we want to provide to the consumers are the best services, in terms of how probably the GPS location or location intelligence or route optimizations can help us to reach faster to the consumer, how probably predictive algorithms can tell us that today the weather is different, today it's raining, today there is a lot of fog, and how can we utilize those real time signals to iterate and provide the best expectation and experience to the consumer. So I'll just take an example, like, and this was something interesting that we tried to solve, was that during COVID and right now as well, there are a lot of hotspots that are created across the city. Like right now in Delhi, there are 400 hotspots that were declared a day before. Now, these hotspots are not just one corner of the city, but they are in the middle of the city. So what's going to primarily happen is not only delivery in these hotspots, but also the routes going through these hotspots are going to change. So how do we utilize that data to ensure collecting, as in like, as we get real time data from how our delivery partners are moving, how their bikes are taking detours from particular routes, tells us that probably this is a hotspot, or this is an area, or a no-go zone, or a black zone, and how can our algorithm learn faster to provide the right kind of estimates to the consumers, so that the promise that we make to the consumer is the right. Also, it helps us in navigating our next order much better from where it was. So yes, data definitely helps us a lot, and then we rely on data a lot in terms of identifying the right things to do, in terms of where are more efficiency levers that we could pull, to ensure that the consumer is getting the best service. And also, there is one inherent objective, that with the same number of supply that we have, or the same number of delivery partners that we have, how can we ensure that we are delivering to more consumers? So how can we optimize in terms of the time that gets wasted in handshake between the consumer and the delivery partner, handshake between the restaurant and the delivery partner? How can we optimize to ensure that there is a minimum time that is wasted there? So yes, data is the backbone, but at the core, we are a food tech company. And to answer the last part of your question in terms of what next, I think Zomato, we've been in terms of innovating new products and services that we can provide to our consumers. In terms of the food umbrella, we have online ordering, we have a food at work which provides services to cafeterias. We have our own dining out business with a pro membership that gives you a lot of benefits. So more iterations around what people need, what is good for people, or around food is something that you would see in the near future as well.
Oh, thank you. That's good to hear. So Siddharth, where do you see yourself?
Okay, I think it's really good to see how you're really
Right. Sorry, Pawan. I think maybe I missed your question because of internet instability. But if I got it correctly, you meant to ask where do I see our startup in terms of the spectrum of being a service provider versus a data enabler.
Yeah.
Is that understanding correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so we very much are as Christoph mentioned, we have much more we have, I think we are in a much more analogous position to where Christoph is, and his answer was we definitely see ourselves as arbiters of data, where we help collect, process, and help visualize data and information in a way in which the end customer can use it for enabling and providing more services. So to essentially give you an example, we started off with we started off by providing location intelligence with a 10-meter accuracy when we initially started Clean Slate. Going ahead, we started leveraging more and more data sources to capture location more accurately, and we moved from 10 meters to 3 meters, and currently we're at 30 centimeters across 3 dimensions. And in the process, we've been using multiple data streams from different sources, starting with electromagnetic fields of Earth to the ambient Wi-Fi signals which are present in the facility, to accelerometer data, gyroscope data, BLE data, other RF data, and simultaneous localization mapping, so on and so forth. And that is where we are currently at. And for us, even going ahead, the goal is to use more and more sources to capture data and present it in a much more accurate and reliable fashion to the end customer, so that they can do more with the existing set of resources. So as has already been mentioned, in the discussion today, we're very much looking at visual streams, so cameras, to be able to help customers deliver what we were earlier doing with sensors. For example, we were earlier using sensors predominantly to be able to track different asset classes. We're currently working with one of the largest automotive companies in India to help them track cars using cameras. Or we're working with the largest FMCG company in the country to help monitor social distancing using cameras, and so that so as to whether social distancing is being adhered to, with the 6 feet of distances is being maintained, which are those hotspots where you see a lot of those deviations in terms of social distancing not being complied with. So the plan for us is to create a network of different data sources, starting with electromagnetic fields of Earth to cameras to RF sensors, so that a comprehensive set of data could be processed and provided to the end customers to make a series of decisions, starting with planning to operation to further optimization, so on and so forth.
So this is quite interesting, Siddharth. Before we start the next round of questions, Rohit, can you please share the poll result, and maybe we can bring up the second question also. So looks like the unique challenge in India is delivery in dense pockets where home locations are not scientifically planned, and unexpected delays in loading, unloading, and delivery times. So my next question to all three panelists, not in any specific order, maybe we say that since you're on the screen, we can start. You talked about moving from 10 meters to 3 meters to, I think you said 30 centimeter. Did you say that? So in dense locations, like how are you really able to address this kind of challenge?
Yeah, so essentially this is a technical challenge, whether it is in a dense location, or for that matter a location in terms of higher density even of concrete or metal. You would see that accuracy, whether it is accuracy would go for a toss. For example, GPS does not work in indoor spaces predominantly because the signal sort of attendings, so it's never accurate in indoor spaces. Or for that matter, even your regular sources of location intelligence, be it Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, in very dense spaces, whether it is higher density in terms of people or metal or concrete, tends to go for tends to attenuate a little bit, and the accuracy does get affected to a certain extent. So we realized this at the very beginning when we were starting CleanSet, because we started with all of these technologies that were available. So it took us a good 2 years of thorough research and development and testing in more than 800 indoor venues to come up with what we are now at, called Inlocate 6.0, which can deliver 30 centimeters of accuracy, where we realized that not a single source of, or rather, the most optimal way to deliver location intelligence is never going to be through a single source. Whereas in outdoor spaces, while GPS is the clear cut winner, and there's cellular signals at a distant second. But when it comes to indoor spaces, there's no clear winner because there's no technology which is universally accepted. And so that is why we started leveraging a combination of different technologies rather than just putting all our bets on BLE by Eddystone or iBeacons or Wi-Fi like Cisco did. By I think that is something that we did a bit smartly because we weren't married to any one single technology. So we combined everything and started working on a machine learning platform which could leverage all of these technologies and self-correct it as you go. And that is what has helped us deliver better accuracy as in all our subsequent projects. And so in dense projects as well, whenever we work in any such pockets right now, we come from that experience of starting to develop and test our technology in the densest of pockets ourselves. So to give you an anecdote, when initially we were in the in the startup space, in the garage phase where we were developing the technology, we used to go to the most crowded malls, and sort of spend about 3 to 4 hours just testing our technology just by moving around, walking around with our phones to just get a lay of the land. And that is how we've tested this as well. We used to just go around, test it day in, day out. We did this for 2 years, and that is when we once we thought we had a reliable piece of technology, we started deploying it for commercial establishments.
Yeah, I would like
Quite
to add.
interesting. You said you tested. Yeah, Christoph, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I would like to add to this because for Here Technologies, we're in a unique position that we do not only offer the digital maps, the real-time traffic and the data pointers, but we also offer the positioning technology. For us, positioning does not stop with GPS, but for us, it has always been a combination of sensors and wavelengths that have been used to allow not only for accurate outdoor positioning, but also for indoor positioning. So for us, actually, when you apply or add the Here positioning API to your solution, for example, on your end device, like a smartphone, our protocol is independent of the method it recognizes the position. And we're actually always creating a combination of the available signals. And with our latest product, the HD positioning, we aim for accuracy that is going down to 20 centimeter level, which is available then on devices that have the sensors available, but we actually make that happen. And we do not stop from outdoor to indoor. It's actually basically the same protocol that is being used. So applications that utilize our positioning technology are basically seamless. Seamless experience can be created from outdoors to indoors. And for us, that is an absolute differentiator. For example, in order to make that happen, we have the largest database of wireless hotspots. We're talking about 4 billion of hotspots that are automatically updated from actually the chipsets of certain smartphone vendors. So it's a real-time database. You can even load that offline. It's highly condensed, and so even offline positioning is possible with our technology. I just want to point that out, and I will get to some of the details also in the final presentation. So thanks for bringing this up, Pavan, and so that we follow the same philosophy.
Interesting. And Adish?
And for us, it's not. I think it's great to go to as precise as possible, 20 centimeter, 30 centimeter. But for us, it is about a house, and luckily for us, houses are big. So for us, yes, the challenges in the denser part of the city, there are challenges in terms of GPS accuracy. And what also happens is both our consumers and delivery partners use their own mobile phones and use their own service provider. And with the kind of GPS accuracy that probably a mobile phone and a GPS service provider combination, there are different kind of errors that we get. Like some mobile phones plus a service provider network would give you an accuracy up to a 200 meter, some will give you up to a 10 meter, but that 200 meter also is a challenge for us to solve. Now how do we solve that is in terms of two folds. So we divide people who have already ordered from one particular address. That's very easy to solve for, because we've already made a successful delivery at that point in time or that place. So that data is saved in the system, and we can probably after a couple of deliveries use our learning algorithms to tell that even if the consumer GPS location is somewhere else, but the actual delivery happened somewhere else. So how do we map those things is something that is an interesting part. But what is more difficult to solve is an address which is added for the first time. Like I as a user have a new address, or I am a new user to the platform, and add a new address. Now I don't have in the system any intelligence, and that is where we have to rely on some external intelligence in terms of how do we map that address to a pin. And also in India, we find this very, very unique, or I'm not sure if other countries also have this problem, that from a company perspective or from a organization perspective, we are very finicky about the location pinpoint, but the consumers are not that sensitive about that till they realize that if they put a wrong pin, their delivery might be facing a lot of challenges or a lot of delays. So that challenge in terms of the first time consumer education, or without education how can we solve it through tech, is something that we are trying to figure out and solve. But yeah, there are certain interesting things like what Christoph was talking about in terms of how do we decode an address to a GPS location or a coordinate, is something that we are trying to work upon. And this definitely is giving us better accuracy, but yeah, still we need to take those steps further to reach to ensure that every consumer who is adding a first address is accurate for us. Because not only is about that particular order being delivered at the right time, what it does is that one order getting delayed leads to a bullwhip effect on the rest of the orders. Like one delay of 10 minutes can screw up the next deliveries which are lying further after this. So it is very, very important from a location intelligence perspective. And yes, these are the two main challenges that we are trying to solve for.
I think a perfect use case for HD positioning, identifying really the first time location of a consumer. So the pin is accurately set. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you. So, Rohit, maybe we can bring up the second question for the poll. So we'll take a short poll question right now. Yeah. Do you think Indian supply chain players leverage technology to drive customer experience or operational efficiency? I think we heard about it, and I'll also let Siddhartha, Atish, and Christoph comment on this as well. And I think the way the question has been listed, if we can think in terms of how the companies across global tech companies are also doing. So is this something we are doing in India? I think it's positioned more on Indian scenario as well. So before we see the poll results, maybe we can go a quick round of response to this. I know we just talked about it. What do you think, Atish? Like globally, are we there yet?
So I think in terms of, I would say that given the challenges that we have in terms of the address mapping system and the accuracy of GPS and the signal strength and all of those things, I think from a tech solve perspective, we are there. And I think in terms of technology, if it is implemented in one part of the world, it can easily be implemented in other part of the world. But I think the landscape is very different. Probably in a city which is, and I'll give you examples from India only, like Chandigarh. It's a very, very structured city where the roads are highly perpendicular and the address system is much better. It's a planned city. Whereas whereas another city which is organically grown, there the difference between these two cities is immense. And in terms of how our location intelligence or accuracy helps us more in the city which is much more planned better, is higher compared to other cities. So yes, there is some delta that we need to cover, but from a tech perspective, and in terms of how do we use that data to optimize for that particular city, yes, I think in terms of the amount of technology and amount of data processing that the companies in India are doing is great. And we can take examples of not only food technology, but also about anybody who is providing hyperlocal services, be it cab services, or it could be basically any other kind of services which are provided at home. All of these players are utilizing the local intelligence that we have of the locations, and trying to optimize all all the individual legs that are there in terms of optimizing the route planning or the customer experience. Like for example, there might be 2 points which are just 10 meters away from an aerial distance perspective, but there is a U-turn which is going to take like probably 5 kilometers. How do you optimize for that? So yes, those are some interesting use cases, but as in like in terms of solutions, with more data, we'll be able to solve them much better.
So I was asking Christopher and Siddharth to respond to this question. That do you see the both technology readiness and operational efficiency in Indian context?
Well, I would say in general, and I look at it from a global perspective, but it's been a while since I've been to India, but the one thing is true, right? Nearly everybody participating in our economy now has a smart device, connected device in their hands, and this is the one thing that connects everything. So it has the location, it has the connectivity, it is personalized, and we can make it actually secure and private. And from that perspective, I would say it's only a matter that actually service providers are starting to leverage the available technologies. And for us, it is so important to enable the platform that we also introduce the marketplace for location data. So actually, Adish, with all the data you have actually already collected, you might find actually other consumers on the marketplace to actually leverage their data or even contribute back to you to quickly enhance on that. So you can move even faster. So for us, in the end, I would say technology is ready. The demand is there. There's a burning platform that companies that do not apply technology now in the COVID situation will not survive this pandemic. And from that perspective, I'm incredibly optimistic that the situation is improving now so rapidly that everybody can benefit in the ecosystem.
Siddharth?
Yeah. So I think I given that we majorly been focused on the Indian context, I personally find that we've somewhat adopted it, and I think that's understandable given that there is and I speak from the context of say larger enterprises per se. Till the time there's going to be a huge difference in GDP per capita, there is always going to be a difference in adoption of technologies, because in the end the ROI is what is going to drive technology adoption for any of the enterprises. If however much accurate or precise, no company is going to adopt it. And in India, that's been one of the reasons why we've seen that it's to certain problems rather than investing in technology and investing heavily in in terms of capital expenditure or operational expenditure. So that is one reason why that's one main reason why I don't see a huge or a widespread adoption of technology yet by supply chain providers. But having said this, I definitely see that it is improving, especially in the wake of COVID, where people were made to produce and ship more with less. I think they started looking at technology far more optimistically and far more urgently than they did before. In fact, I think with apps like Arogya Setu or these contact tracing and social distancing app, I think that's been the biggest experiment of using location outside of Google Maps or such use cases. Educated on the importance of, for that matter, just the awareness of location as to how can it be used for so many more things. So I'm optimistic given the COVID scenario, as Christoph said, but we have a long way to go.
Thank you, Siddharth. That's interesting. So we, in fact, have very interesting questions from the audience. So what I would suggest is, Rohit, if we can pull out the results of the second poll question. So I think in terms of both leveraging technology to drive customer experience or operational efficiency, um, majority feel that yes, we are somewhat there, 55%, while 30% agree that we are there. So it's like almost 85%. And I think that somewhat and no way we are behind needs to be addressed as well. So what I would really suggest now is that if we can continue this discussion, Rohit, with the question and answers from audience, if you can pull out those questions and read out to the speakers, that would be really helpful. We have some interesting questions.
Yeah, we've received some fantastic questions, and I'm going to move through them in the order of popularity. Okay. So the first one we have is how do you define and measure the accuracy of the delivery address? Given an address, how do you define the confidence level of that lat long that it triangulates so that it's accurate? Which one of you would like to take that?
Well, it's a very technical question, right, about the positioning and the geocoding. And the here geocoder API, where you would actually provide a lat long, the positioning API would give you actually and confidence level for that, how accurate this location is, and that will be taken into account in the geocoder. So from that perspective, with the here technology stack, you are able to actually be very confident how realistic that address would be. What we typically do is we are not just pinpointing one lat long coordinate from a positioning, but what we do, we actually take into account multiple measurements, and then the accuracy improves dramatically, because we also have algorithms in place to actually understand how likely it is that this space is actually occupied. Think about a road network, you know, where you have actually the GPS trace is flipping on and off 10, 50 meters away from the road, but actually on the sequence of the GPSs plus the likelihood that somebody would be driving there, we can actually provide the best route matching experience to ensure that actually the GPS trace is mapped into the road network. And the similar thing we're doing in real time when it comes to simple positioning, and continuously enhancing that capability with utilizing multiple technologies. So radio network, radio maps that actually understand the signal strength of not only cell towers, but also Wi-Fi hotspots in your vicinity, plus the GPS data continuously enhances the accuracy. And if anybody is interested in this in more detail, then I think you should really get in touch with here.com. And my colleagues in India can really give you a very, very detailed explanation of that.
Okay, sure. I'll move on to the second one now. So what kind of optimization is applied for dispatch in real time? Don't optimization algorithms take long to solve? That's the second one we have. Adish, would you like to take that?
Yeah, so well, let me
Sure.
take a shot at that. So I think to answer the first part of the question, in terms of, there are a lot of moving parts that are there in. So let's take a life cycle of an order. The consumer places the order. The restaurant is going to take some amount of time to prepare that order. In parallel, the delivery partner is going to take some amount of time to reach to the restaurant, and then there is a delivery leg which is independent of both of these things. But what kind of optimizations can we do here? There are two kinds of optimizations that we can do. One, basically, that the delivery partner is reaching just in time when the restaurant is preparing the food and the food is ready, so that the time that the delivery partner is going to spend at the restaurant can be minimized. So that is one thing that we can do. The second thing is basically, if there are two orders from the same premises or the same building, and from the same restaurants, can we club those orders, can we batch those orders? But at the same time, if they are far apart, then can would that lead to a poor customer experience? So with these paradigms, we try to optimize and ensure at the same time the consumer experience is not going bad, but taking out the maximum efficiency out of the system. That keeping ensuring that the consumer experience is top notch. Whatever we have promised, we are delivering in that time. But if there is some juice that is left in the overall cycle, how can we leverage that? So that is where the optimization works. And I think in terms of optimization algorithms taking time, with the kind of tech advancement that we are in right now, and I think across different industries and across different companies, there are algorithms which do this in nanoseconds or probably milliseconds, which give us that answer in terms of which orders to probably dispatch after 2 minutes or which to dispatch right now, and things like that. So as in these technological solutions definitely make us better than probably not optimizing. But at the same time, all of these things are moving. Like yesterday, a restaurant took 5 minutes to prepare a dish. Today, he's going to take 10 minutes. Identifying that is something that is very difficult. So then again, data plays a very important role in terms of what is the and talking in very basic language, what is the median and the mean of that restaurant preparation time, and how can you optimize with that? So things like that definitely help, and there are much more advanced algorithms which learn on their own to give us better answers every day.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I think I would like to add to this. I think the use case is very, very important. So when you have the fresh food delivery, this triangle of driver, restaurant, consumer, literally these routes and the optimization and finding the closest driver to then dispatch and then trigger the that is happening in sub-seconds, and that is possible with here APIs as well. When it comes to let's say a van loaded with 150 deliveries with a high stop frequency pre-planned, of course, putting 10,000 jobs onto 100 vehicles, that might take a couple of minutes, but we're not talking hours anymore. And with here and the large scale matrix routing, we are able to produce actually a distance and time matrix based on real routes and traffic for 10,000 stops within seconds. And then we apply actually the algorithms to optimize the perfect solving the vehicle routing problem in minutes. So from that perspective, yes, if you put very difficult constraints, very accurate time windows, very limited resources that you have available, the algorithm will take a bit longer. But in general, if you understand your constraints and you understand your algorithm, you have a very, very efficient way in the meantime, including real-time data, incidents, meaning street closures, accidents, and other things, real-time traffic plus the accurate road network is all available at your fingertips. So from that perspective, I think we're at a tipping point from technology where this is available to literally any business.
Sure. So moving on to the next question, I think this one's for Adish again. So how did you manage the change in data patterns during COVID and hence all the predictions that power logistics?
Yeah. So as in like all the industries, not only us, saw a shift in how the demand patterns were changing in terms of and then specifically in food, how your lunch peaks are different from dinner changed completely differently before COVID and after COVID. How your weekends were more skewed pre-COVID, after post-COVID. These data patterns really changed a lot. And similarly, patterns change on the delivery partner service side as well. Now, like there were delivery partners who were giving us 20 hours a week. Would their behavior change to 10 hours a week or probably 30 hours a week? Because those are the things are also going to go into demand supply planning. So yes, it was initially challenging in terms of how do we identify these patterns, but probably in a couple of weeks we had enough data to understand the initial demand patterns, in initial supply patterns, how they are going to marry. And though it's very difficult to optimize without data, so an easier approach that we took was probably let's over invest during this time and ensure that the consumer needs are fulfilled at the right time, So for
Sure.
a couple of weeks, we could overinvest in the market to collect those data points. And once we have those data points, we can iterate and optimize accordingly. So that's how we did it in terms of identifying the right patterns for. And then this changed for different cities as well. Like South India behave very differently, North India behave very differently. So how do you optimize for all of these things was an interesting bit to solve. But with the kind of number of orders that we have, multiple orders in the same city, the richness of data is really high, which helps us to optimize these answers faster than later.
Sure. Moving on to the next one. This one is for Christoph. How do you convert person to IP or location?
Well, the point number one is in your hands, your smartphone. It has a GPS sensor, it has a radio sensor. So you need to have an app, and obviously the person has to open up to share his location. And so for us, it's actually more important to make this secure and private, in the sense of that when somebody allows location detection, then we're actually making 100% sure that this data set, this piece of information, is only used for the intended use case and not for anything else. So for us, actually resolving an address position, that is daily business. That's easy enough. But for us, privacy by design is even more important, so that actually the consumer's rights are also honored.
Okay, sure. Moving on to the next one. So this is from Harsha Karant. And Harsha has asked, what are the best practices for accurately promising estimated delivery dates to customers? Secondly, what is dynamic updates of estimated delivery dates in case of disruption in one or more legs of delivery? Siddharth, if we haven't, would you like to take this one?
No, I think Christoph and Adish are better suited to address
Okay,
this.
so Christoph, if you can take this, I think Adish has gotten disconnected. So if you can just take that one too.
So obviously we talked a lot about this in the meantime. Traffic information is important, but then when you think about the traffic situation, and then you would apply a different mode of transport, let's say a two-wheeler, and your road is actually blocked for car and van traffic, but the two-wheeler, be it a bike or a scooter, can zip through. You have to actually be very smart about this, right? So you need to know the mode of transportation, and then you need to apply basically correction factors based on machine learning for different scenarios to actually then see, how predictions for the estimated time of arrival are influenced by all these factors. So for us, it's very important where you have, let's say, a vehicle, a car routing, things are pretty accurate and you understand still traffic, but the moment you change the modality, you need to take this into account. And this is where I believe also what we heard before from Zomato, they're creating so much data to then understand for different urban environments with neatly laid out city versus an organically grown city. Things are starting to change. So you need to have actually situational awareness into the predictions. And this only comes from machine learning. So massive amounts of data that need to be processed. And you need to actually connect to the driver themselves that actually are on the road to fulfill the orders. And if you have that information, then you are able to make your prediction algorithms better. And this for us is actually the most important thing about the self-learning platform. And connecting these things in a systemic way is what we do.
Okay, sure. So now Siddharth, if you can help us answer a few questions. So Siddharth, somebody has asked Mr. Ravindra Mohan that, do you have a service where we give the coordinates and your application can give the can give the path traversed by that device? It is an inanimate object, and hence mobile cannot be given it to it, but it lets out longitude coordinates. So that, it's a fairly elaborated. Would you like to take that?
Sure. I mean, yeah, it's essentially just storing location historically, and sort of and just sort of remapping them or replotting them on the map to be able to delve into the historical location trail. So that is very much done, whether it is for an inanimate object or whether it is for a person walking around. So we do deliver that. In fact, one of the ways in which we try to do that is where, say, in a factory like Bosch, where a certain there's a certain route within the factory and the warehouse where material needs to be delivered to the assembly station on the shop floor, but the right material wasn't delivered at the right time, because of which production was stopped, and that resulted potentially, say, in huge losses for the facility. Now, to be able to investigate that, one needs information around why that happened in the first place. So one would need information around who was responsible for delivering that material to that assembly station where production was stopped, and what route did they take sometime before to deliver that material. Did they stop? Did they forget to deliver the material? Did they stop there for some time, but the material wasn't collected? So to be able to investigate into any of these possible root causes, we do have a historical location trail in terms of an instant replay of that particular route, or heat map analytics are another representation of that, or spaghetti diagram analytics are another representation of how
Sure.
say any assets or people move inside a facility, whether it is in a retail store to understand customer preferences with or rather customer behavior within the store, or whether it is movement of workers in the facility.
Sure, sure. Okay. So now after this, Siddharth, maybe one more with you. What are some of the sensor-based interventions done to ensure safety of the package that is shipped or stored in a warehouse?
Right. So some of the thing, when it comes to ensuring safety of these, I think this question is sort of, or rather, it is dependent on the context of different categories of products. If it is a perishable good, or there are certain interventions which are required, be it in terms of cold chain storage, or if it is a chemical product, there are certain other interventions required in terms of maintaining humidity at a certain level, or maintaining other chemical presence or gaseous presence in to a certain proportion. So currently there are quite a few of them, starting with humidity maintenance, temperature maintenance, to
Sure.
physical operation as well, as to whether they've been moved around in a harsh manner, they've been thrown around, how are they being carried around as well during transit, or for that matter, how is the humidity, gas maintained, pressure maintained. All these things are all these sensor interventions are available and are being used wherever it is a more urgent problem, and a far more important problem, which could potentially result in shrinkage of inventory if these parameters are not maintained. So they are being effectively used.
Sure, sure, sure. So now I have one for Christoph. Christoph, how do you ensure the location accuracy if the delivery partner is in a no network zone? How does that happen?
Well, so number one, our map content and the routing algorithms are available through our mobile SDKs or software development kits in a completely offline mode. So one can actually build an application with our SDK that allows a driver, a user, to actually make the data for his delivery area, say an Indian state or a large city, completely available offline. So as long as he has some location awareness on his device, but no data connection, he's able to actually complete the routes in a safe way. And then secondly, with the offline positioning stack, also the means of radio networks where one doesn't have connectivity, but he still measures actually the signal strength of multiple Wi-Fi hotspots, and the offline positioning stack, we are still able to resolve his address. and his position. And so from that perspective, utilizing our here mobile SDK allows you to build actually a complete offline delivery experience.
Okay, great. So next I have a question from Kokila Rao. Kokila says, with no touch protocol, verification of orders is definitely a challenge. There might be a discrepancy or a complaint related to the loss between the customer and the product provider. How is the settlement reached? Is that something you can take, Christoph?
Yeah, I can definitely say how we as a technology
Sure.
provider would help actually a company like Zomato to actually solve this problem in order to prevent actually a complaint. And we heard already one is the in the contactless scenario where you have actually the consumer defines actually an accurate or a defined a drop location, saying like the chair in front of his apartment or things like that. Then the delivery driver actually takes a photo. But now the most important thing is what you want to prevent fraud. And this is, let's say, less problematic, let's say, in a fresh food scenario, but rather than with actually finished goods and more valuable items. If you are able to marry actually the photo with a timestamp and a trusted location, if you're able to combine these three into one, then you actually have the 100% proof of delivery at that particular location without actually a signature. And if you're able to connect actually the real-time information of that trusted location with the photo and the timestamp to the consumer connecting the two devices, then he's able to pick it up in a timely manner. So for us, actually, it's very important that the concept of trusted location, which is very easy to spoof. When you think about an Android device, it's a bit more difficult on an iOS iPhone device, but on an Android device, it's very simple to actually spoof your location. A lot of ride-hailing drivers actually use that practice to actually get the better jobs. And actually in the food delivery, we see the same thing. So only with actually here positioning technology plus the trusted location, you're actually able to prevent the spoofing of the location, and this way also preventing fraud in delivery case. So for us,
Sure.
actually, fraud prevention is coming also down to a large part in a trusted location.
Okay, great, great. So with that, I think we've answered most of the question and answers, raised by our audience. If you have any other queries, please do feel free to connect with us offline. With that, we can move to the last agenda item, where Christoph is going to do a presentation and shed light on some of the aspects we touched upon as part of the Q&A section, as well as the discussion. Christoph, over to you.
Thank you so much. So now for the last leg of this this really interesting panel, let me talk a bit about here technologies. You already heard a lot from me about here as a location platform technology provider. But just to give you a bit more perspective, we are actually not a startup. We are employing more than 9,000 employees across the globe. We actually provide global maps. So 200 countries somewhat are mapped by us and available to our customers. And what we're very proud about, we are having a growing number of developers utilizing our services. So nearly 400,000 developers are utilizing our APIs and web services already on a global basis. And we received the honor and through hard work over the last decades to actually be ranked the #1 location platform in every analyst evaluation that has been going on in the recent years. But more important for us is actually how do we actually support businesses to solve their challenges. And we're actually making our services not only available to the automotive industry, which is actually our heritage. So a lot of, the majority of the cars with built-in navigation systems are utilizing our maps for many, many, many decades. However, our web services content and dynamic content is available to many other industries. And of course, today we're talking about transportation, logistics, and retail. coming down to the supply chain and fleet management markets. Well, we've heard a lot and talked a lot about the impact of the pandemic, and we've seen this and heard this also from our fellow panelists here, how it impacted also the Indian businesses. And I think some of these numbers are really, really interesting. So we see that there are 30 million commercial vehicles on Indian roads, and it's pretty much a 50-50 balance between trucks and the other modes of transportation, which actually includes also and probably vans and cars. And then on top of that, you have the massive amount of two-wheelers. This actually is a very interesting mix and just very, very high numbers compared to other countries in the world. Secondly, we also see that Indian businesses still are not utilizing all the technology at hand. However, as we discussed, the potential has been identified. And at this point in time, by utilizing outdated technology, we see that more than half of the businesses are actually concerned about that outdated technology is actually harming their business. And this is only accelerated through the pandemic, right? So why we are so interested in last mile use cases is because, number one, it's actually the most complex part of the supply chain. Plus, it is 50% of the total cost of a delivery actually occurs on the last mile. When you look at an average across all the legs of the journey of a good. And so we see that actually digitizing last mile, allows you to enhance the customer experience. However, the last mile has a bullwhip effect on the middle and the first mile. So the things are really connected, and the demand is driven from the consumer side. The experiences are built around the consumer, and then you need to get your entire supply chain ready for this. Now, here Technologies is actually in the business of supporting transportation logistics for decades now with our Here Location services. And our content and web services are utilized in commercial vehicle management, supply chain visibility. So we talked about the tracking of goods, and then obviously also the last mile fleet operations. And for us, when we again look particularly at the last mile, the main drivers are obviously operational efficiency, the improved service quality from a consumer standpoint. However, we also need to never forget the drivers. In the end, we can talk about the autonomous world and drones, but for many, many years, we will see that the majority of the deliveries are still hand delivered by drivers utilizing multiple modalities. And it's very, very important that we actually support the drivers to keep them safe and be able to do a great job in enhancing that customer experience, right? And in the end, as anything, you need to build this on a very scalable and reliable operational system. So that means the platform that you're basing this on needs to be highly resilient, plus providing all the capability to scale with your business. And this is actually what we are doing. We provide a lot of solutions that allow you to, number one, utilize accurate and granular map content, enable dynamic planning and custom routing scenarios, which come in very handy when you also think about situations where we might not yet have the best data because it's on a private yard or it's a large dwelling building. And how do we actually ensure maps come together? Private maps and public maps. This is something that we do very well. And then you can actually apply our navigation SDKs on top of that. We talked about driver assistance and safety. For us, that is paramount. So to actually provide real-time solutions for the driver, both into their in-dash navigation systems as well as on their smartphones. So they actually have a better experience and are safer on the road. We talked a lot about places, so but more importantly, point addressing. So understanding actually the hyperlocal situation around a certain address and make that data available to anybody who needs that, be it a delivery driver, be it actually a planner when he plans the tours, be it actually a system that matches drivers with consumers. And in the end, we actually structure our offerings into a self-service developer portal where you can actually go in as a developer and get access to the whole HERE world and start coding yourself away. But you can also work with our solution architects in the different countries, as well as particularly also in India, where we offer more packaged market solutions to help you with your business to grow and faster with location technology, that we actually packaged into particular bundles around dynamic route optimization or driver-facing solutions, so you can actually move faster with your own solution delivery. Or, and this is actually what I also would like to talk about now, is you invest in our HERE Last Mile system, which offers a full ready to deploy software as a service application where all the location intelligence, all our routing, all our content is actually baked in. So we are actually in the process of introducing HERE Last Mile to the market right now. The first beta customers are live since Q3 this year. And in Q1 2021, we are aiming for general availability of that platform. So it offers actually a web planning dashboard, which provides a high performance route optimization for dozens of commercial vehicles. So you have actually the ability to pre-plan very complex routes. You can optimize the tours for thousands of jobs. And once you dispatch these jobs, you actually have the ability through the mobile driver app, which is included in the package, to enable real-time tracking and full visibility of your last mile operation. As I already explained before, the driver app utilizes our native SDK currently for Android and for iOS in Q1, which allows not only for traffic-aware navigation, but also offline routing, and allowing to connect everything back into the backend system so that continuously updates are being used for updated ETA calculation. So when it comes down to the benefits of a system like that, it's clear we need to actually, starting from the right, improve the customer service levels. This can only be done through technology. Support the drivers and increase driver retention. Only very satisfied and safe drivers will actually retain in the business and provide the best experience. But at the same time, you need to have a look at the cost. So reducing up to operational expenses is super important, and bringing down the cost to serve of each of the deliveries. And we actually pride ourselves to put everything into a GDPR compliant and data privacy recognizing framework. So for us, it's very, very important that data is only used for the use case that you and your customers signed up for. So here's an example of an e-commerce provider that has been using our beta system already, and we've seen it's an e-commerce player that has been using our system for a while for same-day deliveries. And we've seen already a 15% higher asset utilization in utilizing our planning. We had a much faster planning cycle than before. And we were able to actually help the customer to adjust to dynamic situations using real-time traffic, road closures, and incident information. So ultimately, the drivers were actually much calmer and delivering more stops in the same time. Everything was powered by the HERE Location services, and now this product will be available to everybody to consume. But obviously, we're not stopping there. So for us, there are a number of challenges that we see, and this is why we're investing actually in the last mile, where the planning, the routing, the driving is basically for us just the starting point. The next big thing for us is the electrification of the last mile. And we see this on different modalities, moving away from combustion engines, both on two-wheelers as well as into four-wheelers. And suddenly the range of a vehicle becomes an important constraint into the planning process. So our system is already EV ready from the standpoint that our tour plans take the current max distance into account when you provide that information. This could come, for example, from a telematics system, a telematic box that is directly connected to the device, to the vehicle. Secondly, driver safety. So with the Here LiveSense product, we are actually enabling and turning each smartphone with the driver app into actually a safety device, into a dash cam that is connecting and identifying harsh braking maneuvers, potholes, and situations on the road. And ultimately, we are able actually to also process map updates from this information. So visualizing and learning from the driver experience for us is critical to enhance continuously our product. And when it comes to the driver on the road, to actually the final meter, that we call the situation where you actually stop your vehicle and then you actually do the last leg of your journey by foot, connecting outdoor and indoor with a seamless experience is for us, let's say, the final goal. So in the last couple of minutes, I would actually like to talk about this use case from last mile to final meter, and basically starts with the Here indoor maps. So actually, we have already mapped 10,000s of venues around the globe that are available as a Here map. And this basically means if it's available as a Here map, you can apply all the routing, all the positioning, all the geolocation APIs onto the map as if it would be a public map for the public road network. And so we have a service that allows you also as a customer to come in with your own geometry data, and we can take CAD drawings, aerial photos, plus additional information to create the first base map, and then allow you to add additional features to it, indoor points of interest, connectivity like stairs, escalators, and elevators. Very important, the entire indoor parking. And when you connect indoor to outdoor, entrances and exits become super, super important. So the first thing is really to, with Here indoor maps, you are able to create this representation of your buildings. And then when you combine that with what we have talked about already, the Here indoor positioning, you suddenly have a complete solution also for indoors. Where things become really interesting is our latest product in the high definition GNSS positioning, where we actually bring sub-meter accuracy, like I talked about, 20 centimeters possible, to provide a full cloud service that enables any device that has the right sensors and chipsets to improve the accuracy compared to available systems at large. So my time is up, and I would like to just close with a number of key takeaways. So number one, Here Technologies as a location platform is actually addressing challenges in the last mile, making not only services and solutions available, but also complete applications like the Here Last Mile product, which is a full service SaaS application. And in combination with our latest addition to the positioning stack, our HD GNSS positioning, we're actually enabling use cases like from the last mile to the final meter, and making things available to our customers. So if this has sparked your interest, and there's so much to talk about, and I could do this for hours, I would like to encourage you to actually get in touch with us and then start a discussion with our Indian colleagues, supported by our global product management team, to actually find solutions for your business. Many thanks.
So thanks so much for that, Christoph. That wonderful presentation, and for your time, all the speakers. Thank you so much for taking out the time to join us today. Secondly, we would also like to thank our audience for joining us today, and for all your inquisitiveness. We would especially like to take this time to thank our partner Here Technologies for supporting us. Really appreciate the support. And we will be doing very soon a session on asset tracking through IoT, a session on that on 2nd December at 2 p.m. again. So do join us for that. In the meantime, here's a bye from all of us.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you.